Good evening and welcome to The Author's Corner with your host, author Kimberly McLemore, as she welcomes her guests into the studio to discuss excerpts of their book.
All right, good evening and welcome to The Author's Corner. I am your host, author Kimberly McLemore, and thank you for tuning in to tonight's show. Tonight, I have two amazing guests in store for you as usual, but let me take a couple of minutes and tell you a little bit more about myself and the purpose of the show. I'm the author of How to Be a Success by Just Being You. Are you living or existing the pros and cons of balancing life? And the 2019 ILO Award Author of the Year for Social Awareness for my book, Memoir, Deception of the Heart, A Real Look into Domestic Violence. I am also the CEO of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and the host of the podcast, Your Resource for Success, right here, also on iHeartRadio, and the founder of Author Kimberly M. McLemore, LLC. But, the purpose of this platform is to provide new and existing authors an opportunity, tell us their story, promote their books, and, of course, their upcoming events. But let me introduce to you our very first special guest. I have Tiffany Toombs, author of Stop Being a Selfish Bee, a comprehensive guide to living your best life through radical self-love. You may know Tiffany Toombs as the international speaker and leading expert on rewiring the unconscious mind for success and tapping into your personal potential. For over 20 years, Tiffany has entertained, educated, and transformed the lives of thousands of people across the world. So without further ado, let me help me welcome to my platform, Miss Tiffany Toombs. Hey, Tiffany, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing good. I'm excited about this evening and having the opportunity to talk to you because you sound like you have a lot of good things going on back there, and I can't wait to hear this story.
Yes, I'm excited to share.
All right. Well, before we dive into all the goodies, I just want the listeners to know a little bit more about who Tiffany Toombs is. Share some more about yourself with us, Tiffany.
So I am I like to break all the rules. So I'm the oldest child, but I'm also the rebel in the family, the person who doesn't do what anybody else wants me to. So when I put out my book, my family was shocked for a number of reasons. Firstly, because of the title of the book. Right. And secondly, because I so openly shared what had been like the family secret for so long. And, it was something that my family felt uncomfortable with me sharing, and yet I felt that people understanding what it's possible to overcome in this life, and how if we let our past really hold us back, then we're not fulfilling the God-given plan that we're here for. And so my mission in life is to empower 1 million people to live an intentional life that's aligned with the truth of their soul by letting go of the emotional baggage.
All right. Well, I tell you what, the first line that you just said, not being typical, how would we not know, especially with that title? So I was like, yeah, when I see this, like, there's something good about this title. There's something definitely going on. And, obviously, the book, like you said, it's a comprehensive guide to living your best life through radical self. So when you talk about radical self, how did you come up with that idea beyond the fact that, you are this person that doesn't conform to whatever everybody else thinks that you should? How have you decided that this is what people really need to know and really need to understand about themselves as a whole?
Yeah. So self-love became this like pop culture term. It started showing up in all these memes within the last 10 years. And I bought into the superficial self-love at first, like, oh, well, I've had a tough day. I deserve a glass of red wine and, treat yourself. And I thought that all those things would help me find more inner peace, more actual liking of myself. I mean, it's called self-love, so you should actually like yourself if you're doing those things. And I found that I just was sinking deeper and deeper into a hole. I was getting more and more stuck. I was settling more and more in life And I was not at all living my highest potential. And so for me, radical self-love, what I discovered is that, can you have red wine and bubble baths? Absolutely. But that's not the major part of self-love. And self-love is really digging into the closet, pulling out the skeletons and saying, okay, which of you don't serve me anymore? And for most of us, it's most of those skeletons, and then becoming friends with them. And I think so many people live in fear of looking at that stuff that they've suppressed deep down, all that emotional baggage that they're carrying, because they don't know how it will make them feel. And ultimately, it might feel crappy to look at while you're doing it, but what you find on the other side is so much freedom and peace and calm and clarity that it makes it worth it. And so for me, that's really what radical self-love is encouraging people, have your red wine and bubble bath on the day that you need it, but also dig in and do the work on yourself.
Yeah. And I like what you just said. You're right. It's one of those things that people don't normally like to face. And that's usually facing the truth, understanding the past. Why are you still holding on to what you're holding on to? What is keeping you from moving forward? And I think a lot of times people just don't want to know. And even if they do want to know, they don't know how to capture that moment in their lives. Like you said, it's just this thing that we're always told, go take care of yourself, do this, do this, do that. But that's fine, but it doesn't hide those demons, so to speak. So, eventually they're going to come back out. And so when you talk about rewiring the unconscious mind and tapping into that, what are you basically focusing on in that perspective?
So what a lot of people don't realize is that the limiting beliefs that we have now as adults were created. They were planted in our minds between the ages of 0 and 7. And so we then spend the rest of our life validating those belief systems. We look for proof for the rest of our life of that happening. So for me, for example, I was abused by my stepmom growing up. And it was a very small part of my life. It was every second weekend for about 7 years. And yet I developed these belief systems that I wasn't good enough, that it wasn't safe to stand out, that, I had to be perfect or people would reject me, and I couldn't set boundaries with people or they would reject me and wouldn't love me. And so I learned those lessons, or I developed those beliefs between the ages of 3 and 10 when the abuse was happening. And I looked for ways to validate them for the rest of my life. So I would find people to get into relationships with. I'll give you a perfect example. I will never forget this junior high dance that I went to, this middle school dance. And I'm there, getting my groove on with my girlfriends. And one of them comes running up to me and says, "Oh my gosh, so-and-so is going to ask you out tonight." And I just feel like this cold sweat set in over my body. The guy that was going to ask me out was like the nicest guy in the world. So I should be excited about that. But in my mind, and this is happening obviously at an unconscious level, and I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, in my mind, I didn't believe that I was worthy of being treated like the princess that he would have treated me like. And so I went in, we go into like full fight or flight mode. And I think 2020, we're seeing a lot of this right now where whenever our belief systems are challenged, right? People are challenging old belief systems, deeply rooted belief systems, deeply rooted systems that exist. And so when we start challenging those things, the people who have an opposing view actually go into fight or flight. We're programmed to stay the same. We're programmed to keep holding on to the beliefs that we have. And so I put on this Oscar-worthy performance, faked sick, got my dad to, I went full ninja style, snuck out of the dance, got my dad to pick me up so that I didn't have to be asked out by this person, forgetting that the next day I would have to. So I completely dismissed the idea of this guy being a suitable partner and made up all these reasons. He's too nice. I could never date him, put him in the friend zone. And women, we do this a lot, right? We have no self-worth. We don't think that we're worth it. So we friend zone the nice guy. And then meanwhile, we've got this other guy handing us a bouquet of red flags. And we're like, "Oh, you're the sweetest person ever." And so we ignore red flags. We don't pay attention to the glaringly obvious things. And then we wonder how we end up dating the same person over and over and over again. And their behavior gets progressively worse and the face changes, but that's it. Right. And it's because we hold on to these belief systems from childhood. And so when I talk about reprogramming the mind, it's about going in and really becoming clear of what are the belief systems that you have. And then, we do some slightly spiritual, slightly scientific work to heal those first events. So I would go back and I healed my inner children between the ages of 3 and 10 that were being abused by a woman who was a domestic violence survivor. And so at that time, when I had very little understanding of the world, I took it to be that I was the one who wasn't good enough. I was the one who was broken, and that's why I was being treated this way. And now I can look back and see that I wasn't broken. She was broken. And hurt people hurt people. Yeah. And so when we go back and we understand those circumstances that the belief systems were first created in, we're able to rewire, like the brain physically changes itself so that we don't have to keep holding on to those beliefs and living that same life over and over and over again based on those beliefs that don't serve us.
Right. And I mean, what you said was just profound because, like you say, as children, we are told from the time we're in the womb to the time we come out that everything is A, B, C, or D. And when you come off of that path, you're told, oh, you're doing this wrong. Your life isn't going to be worthy, and another great example of what we're talking about, and that we hear all the time as well. Everybody has to go out and get an education. Nothing wrong with getting an education, but what are you getting that education in, and how are you utilizing that tool to better yourself versus just everybody needs to go out and get a degree? And I think when that process was brought into, probably and I say right around the 80s and latter part of the 70s and 80s, when everybody was saying, go out and get this degree, you're all going to get jobs. Everybody got a degree, and guess what? You still got some of the same people working in the same realms that they didn't think they should have because they got a degree. Because, we're seeing that constant conformity of you have to do this, is the thing was, hey, you're born, you go to school, you get a job, and that's it. And so a lot of times that same rewiring system it's because families are being raised by what they know. So, what their parents knew of or know how to do things. And so it's like, how do you rewire that? Those are some of the things that I have seen growing up and still see a lot of today, because a lot of it is fear of trying to deal with the unknown or wondering what would your life be differently if you are going beyond the realms of what everybody says that you should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even I was highly academic, so the school system didn't bother me because I could memorize things very quickly. I had a photographic memory, so I was blessed in that way. But I watched my brothers, who are both highly intelligent in different ways to me, struggle and create these belief systems that if I could do it, then they couldn't. Because when we were in school, I was the oldest, so I went through first, and I'm getting straight A's without even trying. And then they come along and they put in their blood, sweat, and tears, and they're pulling like C's and D's, and teachers are like, what happened with you? And it's really unfair for teachers to do that, because we're all geniuses in our own way. I love the Einstein quote that we're all geniuses, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then it'll spend its whole life thinking that it's dumb. And that's what the school system does is, my youngest brother is great with his hands. He can take anything apart and put it back together again. But he has this belief that if I can do it, he can't. And so that has stopped him from traveling the world and from doing all these different things, because that's what I've done. And so because I've done it and I've figured out a way that worked for me to do it, he thinks that he can't. And my middle brother is the same. He's recently got into running a business as well, but for a long time, he was just like, well, I can't do it because you do. And I wasn't as smart as you in school. I didn't pull the same grades. I didn't go to university. And I was like, I don't even use my degree. So I think we really need to, I was like, I have a $40,000 piece of paper. Like, that's about all, and probably even more than that. I don't even know what it was. So I think we really need to change the norms in society. And that's part of what my book is about, is that, so many times when we're chasing our dreams, we get told we're selfish. I moved to Australia. So I'm from Canada originally. I moved to Australia for 8 years, and my immediate family supported me, but I had friends and extended family who would tell me that I was being selfish because I wasn't there. And then when I moved back to Canada, met my husband, who was living in Dallas, and now I'm living in the U.S. And again, I'm hearing like, oh, you know, it's kind of selfish that you're so far away from your niece and you're so far away from your family. And I'm like, my family is okay with it. And this is what I have to do for me. Like, we can't stay in a box because it makes somebody else comfortable. And what I see a lot of the time is that when people start chasing their dreams, they get told that they're selfish, so they squash themselves down, and then they're unhappy. And my belief is, and the whole premise of the book is that that we're all here with a message, with a gift, with a talent to share with the world. And that talent will change someone's life. It doesn't matter if it's one person's life or if it's millions of lives. We're here to change one life. And so if we give in to the mold, fitting the mold that other people want us to, if we give in to people pleasing and perfectionism and fear and self-doubt and all of that other stuff that leads to self-sabotage, then that's actually being selfish, because there's somebody out there waiting for our gift. When I moved back from Australia, I had just lost everything. I had 6 horrific years running businesses in Australia with 2 narcissists. It was
wow.
And you know, we had a $1.8 million loss. It was the most stressful 6 years of my life. I'm surprised that I'm not completely gray haired. And it was so stressful. And I was moving back, and I had $3,000 to my name. And I kept thinking, you know, I'm really feeling pulled to do this coaching business. Where I'm from, the economy there has been depressed for about 10 years. And it's Canada, so they are used to getting mental health care for free. And with the coaching that I do, you know, that's not going to get covered. And I come from a very conservative place. So, you know, a very like cowboy mindset. We don't talk about our feelings. And so you know, my friends and family are like, nobody is going to pay you to talk about their feelings. Like, you need to get a job. And every time I would look at job ads, I could feel my soul dying a little bit. And I just thought, you know, I have to try. I have to give this a shot. And I was journaling one day because I had all this fear coming up. So I'm journaling, and I just wrote down, you know that the techniques that you use change lives. You've physically watched it happen. You've watched people like release the shackles from their past and go on to do amazing things. So what would happen if you just put all that fear and all of that aside, and for like 1 year, just 365 days, you went all in on yourself? And if it didn't work, then you can go back to the 9 to 5 and to doing what everyone else wants you to do. But just 1 year of your life, go all in. And so the answer is that in those first 12 months, I helped over 155 people one-on-one. I started a podcast. I wrote my book, and I actually hit 6 figures. I spoke on a number of stages as well in the first year, and I hit 6 figures in my first 12 months. And that was enough proof to me to know that when we step into our light, then the universe or God will show up for us as well, but we have to take the first step.
Exactly, because the doors are always open. It's like it says, it's when you're going to walk through it. And when you made that decision, what did everybody else say, and how did they feel when they seen the progress that you had made?
Oh, still to this day, like my family doesn't listen to, and this includes extended family, they don't listen to my podcast or anything. They haven't read my book. I've given them all signed copies, but they haven't read it. There's very little engagement with my social media posts. I've been asked a couple times, like, stop sharing your story, stop talking about this. We don't want to talk about it. But and this is my mom and my stepdad. So they weren't involved in the abuse. They didn't even actually know what was happening. But because they found out when I was older, they have their own guilt and shame around what happened, which I understand. But it's So, I mean, I've had aunts call me and ask me if I'm running a pyramid scheme or a Ponzi scheme. I've had cousins make snide comments. Other relatives make snide comments about what they perceive my lifestyle to be, because I'm always traveling and I'm always speaking. So I get a lot of it must be nice. And I'm like, well, you don't see the hours I put in. So,
exactly. Exactly. This is a business. Yeah. This isn't just for fun, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But
so I'm okay with people not understanding.
Right. And but that's, even though you're talking predominantly about family in this, situation, that is a lot of people when they don't understand it most of it just comes with fear. And like, so that the unknown, not really knowing, why are you going this direction? Why do you feel like you got to tell the whole world? And at the end of the day, like I said, it's really about what you need and what you want and how you can see this has helped you. And it can help somebody else because, like I said, it's just really tapping into understanding who you are and why you're holding on to that baggage that you hang on to and how to let go so you can move forward. So when you are doing this, you talked a few minutes ago about how you use science and you used, hypnosis, you'd go back and you kind of go through the past. So talk a little bit about that, because I noticed when I did some research, reading on you, I'd been at speaking events called by Marshall Silver, the world's most televised hypnotist. So how does that tie into some more about what you do with your business?
So some of the techniques that I use directly with my clients involve hypnosis. Marshall was a mentor of mine who then asked me to come and speak. He's really great at embedding suggestions and hypnotizing people to go forward and be successful. Mm-hmm. And what he found was that his specialty is not in letting go of the past stuff, where mine is. And so when I went into his network and hired him as a coach, and then got to know other people in the program and in his inner circle, they started asking me to do some of my techniques on them. Mm-hmm. And what he found was that the combination of my work with his accelerated people's success even more. And so they would come, they would sign up with him, they would do some of the hypnosis stuff with him, and they would find that they were still hitting up against this upper limit or this glass ceiling. And then they would come and do a couple sessions with me or a weekend course with me. And then they would just like break through with so much power that they would like break through the next 3 glass ceilings that were above them. So he asked me to come and speak at his event because our work was so well aligned. Wow.
Yeah. And that makes sense. Like I said, he goes forward and you go backwards, and then here it is. It kind of all comes together so people can truly move forward in the right way. So that's very interesting. And then the other thing I wanted to ask very quickly is that you talked about trying to empower 1 million people to live intentional lives. How do you plan on doing that? How is that going to work?
So through everything that I do. So I aim every day to help one person, whether that's through my podcast, through my book, through ebooks, through, various master classes and webinars and things that I do online, courses that I run, speaking events, working with clients one-on-one. So everything that I do on a day-to-day basis is aimed at creating more light in the world so that people can get the self-awareness that they need to truly step into their power, purpose, and potential.
All right. Well, you're definitely on your way with that. And you are obviously doing a fantastic job. And of course, with the pandemic and stuff that we have going on, how has your business escalated? Because I'm sure with, people having to be kind of stuck at home, having to rethink their lives, wondering what they're going to do next. Some people's lives have been changed tremendously. How have people reached out to you?
This year has been incredible. I'm actually grateful for it because I think it's caused people to really slow down and actually have to look at the stuff that, to look at the things that they've been suppressing so that they can actually start to heal. So I think as crazy and ridiculous and just ridiculous that 2020 has been, I think it's given people the space that they needed to start the healing process, which is always a great thing. It's going to raise the collective unconscious vibration. My business has been growing like crazy. I actually had to take a couple weeks off because I got so burnt out that it went so crazy. I shifted all of my programs to be 100% virtual. So people wherever they are in the world can join in on my weekend retreats and everything like that. And people just kind of came out of the woodworks. Like, I've been wanting to do this with you for so long, but couldn't afford to travel or couldn't travel because of kids or whatever. And so just had this mass influx of people signing up, which was awesome. So we've been able to help a lot more people this year, which is great.
Wow. Yeah. And like I said, it's funny how some people are going for, the complete opposites. Either it's been a really great year for everybody or either it's been a terrible year. But, I absolutely agree with you that this has been the year of opportunity. It's been the year of self-assessment and wondering where you're going in your life and what do you need to do differently or do the things you've been wanting to do and you've never done it. So, but you having the opportunity to be able to help more people virtually is powerful. And I think a lot of us who are in business are learning that, those who have been fighting it for a long time of not wanting to go virtual, we have been brought to our knees and now we don't have a choice but to do things a little bit differently. And it's beneficial, and it's been benefiting everybody in a different way. But what you're doing, I just find it fascinating. And, the truth, I love the raw truth about you in your book. Stop being a selfish bee. I mean, it couldn't have come out with a better word for it, but and a better phrase. But I also wanted to ask you real quickly, do you have any events coming up or engagements that you would like to share with our listeners this evening?
I do, actually. I have a masterclass coming up next Thursday evening. So it's virtual. People can attend. And it's how to overcome the 3 universal fears that lead to self-sabotage and step into your courage.
All right. And how can they reach out to you to sign up for that if they would like to?
So if people want to register, they can go to www.masteringmymindset.com and you can register absolutely free.
All right. Wow. Hey, can't beat that, right? Free. Everybody needs to listen to that word, and it's good free stuff. It's not just stuff, and that's the key. So, Tiffany, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show this evening. You are a very powerful woman, and I can hear the enthusiasm in your voice when you speak and the things you want to say, and we could actually go on and on and on because I would love to talk to you more about this, but I really do appreciate you coming on tonight. And, I would hopefully like to have you back on another time on the show because I would definitely think that there's more that we could share and people could learn from you. But again, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And everybody else, if you've been listening in, if you didn't hear all of Tiffany's interview tonight, you can go back and listen to the replay after the show because we are absolutely live, but you have missed out on some great golden nuggets and what she is sharing. Tiffany is the author of Stop Being a Selfish Bee. I won't say the whole word, but it is a special guide, a comprehensive guide to living your best life through radical self-love. So again, thank you for coming on tonight, Tiffany. For everybody else, we're going to go to a quick commercial break before we bring on our next guest. So just hold on and hang tight.
Welcome back to the Author's Corner with your host, author Kimberly McLemore.
All right, hello listeners, and welcome back to the Author's Corner. I'm your host, author Kimberly McLemore, and I'm going to introduce to you my second special guest before we have her call in. And I have Miss Tamara Frazier, who is the author of Your Own Kind of Beautiful. And better known as Tamara Frazier is an author, ghostwriter, a poet, and motivational speaker who uses her very colorful life as a single mother and a high school mentor coach to pen realistic stories that inspire and touch the heart. So we're going to have Miss Tamara come on and tell us a little bit more about herself. So just give her a second, because I'm excited to learn about her amazing book and what she's got going on in her world. So just hold tight. You guys will hear her calling in just a couple of seconds, and we'll get this party rocking and rolling. So we're going to see Miss Tamara. Here she is. All right. Hello, Tamara. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
All right. Well, I have already pre-introduced who you were, and we are excited about learning more about who you are and your book. Of course, you are the author of Your Own Kind of Beautiful, and I also am excited to learn how you got that beautiful middle name, Tamara Frazier. So before we get started with that, I want to say hello to our listeners and tell the listeners just a little bit more about who Tamara is.
Hi. Well, one correction. My name is Tamara Frazier. I am a children's book author. I am also an administrative assistant and a high school track coach. I am the published author of 2 books, a biography. In addition to Your Own Kind of Beautiful, I've written a biography called In His Own Time, a story of family, friends, and courage. And I'm in the process of writing my second children's book. Well, it's in the publishing process right now.
Okay. All right. Well, you have been busy.
I have.
Well, you know, hey, that's how true authors are, right? We don't just do one. We think we're only going to maybe do 2, and then the next thing you know, you're doing 3 or 4 or whatever else can come to mind. So I'm excited to hear more about your books. Before we dive into Your Own Kind of Beautiful, why don't you give us a little bit of synopsis of the other books that you have previously wrote? And I definitely want to hear a little bit about your biography. It's In His Own Time, a story of family, friends, and courage, and and that's the book, right?
Yes. I published that book in 2005. That was my first book. That's my baby. I wrote the book about a really, really good friend of mine. Her name is Coach Faye Baker. She's the high school basketball coach. She was involved in a car accident. Well, actually, it was a van accident while she was on her way to church that left her paralyzed from the waist down. And the book chronicles her uphill battle with gaining her independence and getting back to coaching while being paralyzed.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep. Okay. So let me ask you this. What made you decide, Tamara, that you just decided I want to be an author one day? How did this happen?
Actually, it was Coach Faye Baker that kind of planted the seed for me. I was working with her in her classroom. She's a classroom teacher, high school, and I was working as her assistant. And when she had her accident, I remember I was at the hospital because we're also family friends, and I was there when the doctor told her that she would never walk again. And being her assistant, I could see every day how she was making strides and her determination to walk again and to gain her independence. It intrigued me, and I was just so fascinated with watching her progress that one day I mentioned to her that I thought that she should write a book because there's so many people out there who need encouragement and who need motivation, because sometimes when the doctor tells you that you'll never be able to do something again, sometimes we let that get inside of our head. But she was the exact opposite. And when I told her that I thought it would make a great book, she said, my parents have been saying that, but I don't want to write a book. Maybe you should write a book. And it was just that simple.
Oh, wow.
And she planted the seed, and over the next few weeks, I just kept envisioning and imagining myself writing a book. And then one day I just picked up my computer and I just started typing just to see. And when I showed her, what I had done, which ended up being the first chapter in the book, she was like, "Oh my God, you have got to do this." And so she told her parents that I was writing her book. And once she told her parents I was writing her book, I couldn't turn back.
Wow.
So that's how my journey began.
Wow. And it's interesting that you started out really at ghostwriting, and most authors don't normally start out ghostwriting first. It's usually, I'm going to do my own thing, and then that usually comes to pass. I mean, that's been my experience. I have not seen too many or met too many people who do it in that direction, because a lot of times when I think about ghostwriters, it's like you said, you're pulling out information that how you see what they're seeing. But I'm thinking, how does that person pull out information for them versus it being your information? So I always find that very fascinating when you're dealing with ghostwriters. But like you were saying earlier, that you were there, so you got to see every phase, every step, every process, everything that she was going through from the day that she was hurt to her full recovery. So I think that experience makes it a little bit different. So once the book came out, have you and her had the opportunity to, speak with other people about this and the journey that you guys went through together on this?
Yes. Even when the book first came out, we did a book release. And then after the book release, we had so many people calling us to come and speak. They wanted her to speak mostly to teenagers. I think it was a matter of her being a high school basketball coach. And she inspired her team so much that even her students, every year she would, tell them, because of course they're wondering why their teacher is in a wheelchair. And she would tell them, about her story. And her story always seemed to inspire the kids. And so people asked her to come and speak, but she would never go anywhere without me. She always wanted me there. And so I unwittingly became a speaker, because sometimes I would introduce her. They would ask me if I would introduce her, so I would have to get up and do the introduction. And sometimes people started calling on me.
Wow.
So she would always accompany me. She said, "I won't let you go out and do it by yourself." Of course, we've had a couple of events where she had to go without me because I wasn't available, or I had to go without her. So, we've been doing that, and it's been 15 years. And
wow.
The last time we spoke was in February, right before the pandemic. We spoke at an elementary school. So we're still called on to speak about that book, and that's just a blessing.
And that is, I was sitting here thinking the same thing, that normally when you have your first book come out, it's, it's usually really exciting and people are always on board, but then it usually can phase out, and then with you being an extended writer, you constantly write more other books as well. But I find that it's beautiful that you guys have been able to hold on to this relationship, not just because of the work, but because it's a true friendship and you are holding each other up continuously. So I find that really fascinating and appreciative, because, when you start to get to a certain level, we don't always have that, and people don't always hold on to what they say they're going to do. So it's a blessing within itself that you guys are continuing that relationship and sharing your story, because it obviously is, like you said, a very heartfelt biography and very much needed to encourage other people to move forward no matter what circumstances they have to face in life. So congratulations on that. And I do want to talk about Your Own Kind of Beautiful. I just loved the title, and I love the little girl that's on the cover. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. Because we all know as authors, one thing that I always teach people and coach them on as a book coach is that, the title and the cover have to resonate with each other. And normally when it can resonate with you in a certain way and other people, then that's when people really want to dive into books. So tell us the story. Explain to us how you came up with the title, Your Own Kind of Beautiful.
Oh, let's see. How did I come up with the title? Because I have a tendency to write, and then the title usually comes much later. So for a long time, I did not have a title for the book. I had the story. I had written the story in 2013, and it didn't have a title. I just called it Daisy. That's the title character, titled Daisy Book 1, because I knew I wanted to write more books about her. And so for a long time, I didn't know what the title was until I got to the end. We got close to finishing up the illustrations. My illustrator, Jaron Merchant, once she gave me, right before the final, I just looked over the book and I read over it a few times, and I said, Daisy's learning that she doesn't have to be Gracie's kind of beautiful. It's okay for her to be her own kind of beautiful. And so that's kind of where the title came from. It's just teaching everyone that you don't have to be your kind of beautiful, her kind of beautiful, as long as you're your kind of beautiful. We all have different things that make us stand out, that make us unique, and that's good enough. That's good enough.
Absolutely. And yeah, like I said, and I love the name Daisy. That's cute. So it stands out as well too, but you're absolutely right. You have to be your own. You have to figure out what that own kind is. But when you're talking about a children's book, how do you present that? What makes that child look at that, besides the fact that they see themselves on that cover or see themselves what's inside the book, what pulls them into it to understand that what their journey is, and to understand that they have that special beautiful that's within them and it's their own. How do you bring that out for them?
I think you said it, the main thing that resonates with a lot of the kids and even adult women is that they can look at those characters. They can look at every character in the book, and they can see themselves, or they can see their mom, their daughter, their sister, and for me, it was so important to give the kids someone that looked like them, because I didn't have that, so that was the main thing, making sure my character, and a little secret, my main character, I wanted all of my characters to look like someone that I knew. And so my main character, she has the features of all the women in my family. My family has slanted eyes, and they have the high cheekbones. And so I used my niece, she's 17 now, but I used her as the main character. It's in her likeness.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm sure she's excited, and when she heard that she was basically a part of the the book, and that's pretty cool. And you're right, it is something that we, as Black people, we want to see ourselves, and we don't often see. And of course, now things are obviously got much better, and that's the beauty too about being self-published and doing a lot of your own books, is that you can write whatever you want. You can make sure the characters look exactly like you. You don't have to have somebody decide what's best for what you feel in your heart and what you're trying to provide for the children, and like you said, even adults, because it does resonate with adults as well, and it should, because that is the way that you can share their stories with your children. So have your grandkids had the opportunity to enjoy all your books as well?
Well, I have 3 grandsons, and I have read the books to my grandsons. The oldest one, he's 6, so he understands. Right. And, he says, Nana, that's a girl book. But I had to tell him, well, you know what? This is going to help you understand the little girls a lot better. And I tell him this is going to teach you how to treat the little girls, because sometimes they have, they don't think that they're pretty, So he and I went through the book and we read it. Now, my 3-year-old grandson, he really likes the photos. He likes the illustrations because they're bright, and he likes the color. So that was his,
Right, which makes sense, because he still got a little bit more time to learn and understand about girls, right?
Right.
Oh my goodness! Well, I just think it's cute, and really it's amazing to see the reaction of children in they have no fear to their reactions, and they don't mind asking the questions, whether they're hard or not hard, to get a better understanding of why is this important for me, so to speak. And even though your 6-year-old grandson was saying, hey, this is for girls, but you flip that on him to make him definitely understand that you need to know about little girls and why it's important that they look the way they look or they feel the way they feel. And so he knows how to treat them. That's a very valuable lesson at a very young age, because, kids are very resilient in their own way, but kids can also be very mean if they're not taught the proper way of doing things. Yeah. So I like that. Definitely, because always kids are definitely going to tell you the truth about whether you want to hear it or not, right? So,
right.
Yeah, they're the best way to get any critiques.
Yes, they're going to give it to you straight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, why does this look this way, and what are you doing, right? But, hey, it's very helpful, very, very helpful. So you said you are absolutely working on another book, and it's a part of the series, Walking with Grace. Can you give us a little sneak peek in about Walking with Grace?
Well, the Walking with Grace is the title of my series, and that title was my sister. My sister, she helped me a lot with the creative concept of the book. She came up with the Walking with Grace series, and one thing about that, the main character, Daisy, her best friend is Grace. And so a lot of the stories, and I've written three in the series, and a lot of the stories take place when they're walking to school or walking somewhere. So my sister came up with Walking with Grace. Not only does it, speak about, a spiritual walk, and because the book teaches those soft skills, but it also talks about the friendship that Daisy has with Grace.
Wow.
So that was my sister's idea. She's really good. She's very creative like that.
Well, and I like the fact that your family is very supportive of what you do as well. And that's important because, it's when we just had a conversation a few minutes ago about the complete opposite, where, sometimes family is not always supportive, and it obviously depends on the circumstances that you're in and how different things can be. But when you have that involvement and people can see the creativity and help you, continue to move forward in what you are doing, that is very important for everybody to be a part of, and especially young. Like I said, we were talking here obviously earlier about the young children, and not just your family, but children outside of your family. I love that activity, that family is definitely a part of who you are and what you're encouraging them to be involved in. And when your kids can see that, I think that's even much more important. That, we can see as families working together as one is really, I guess, what I'm trying to say here.
Yes. It actually goes a little bit deeper when you speak about family, because my sister and I were having a conversation when she was talking to me about becoming a children's book author. I was always searching for another book to write. I need another topic. I need another person. And she says, well, you need to mind a business that pays you. And I've been working in the school system for 27 years, so of course I knew what she meant. I work with high school students, but by the time they get to high school, a lot of times the little girls, they have lots of self-esteem issues, and it's kind of hard getting through to them at that level. So that's how the children's book, let's just go back to the foundation. Let's be a part of the foundation. And all of the characters in all of the books in the series are named after my family members. Daisy was my grandmother's name.
Okay.
And her best friend Grace, that was my aunt, and the older sister Vivian is my mother. So every character in the book is named after a family member. I love those classic names. Right. So it really worked out well, that part. But yes, every character is a member of my family, and they have passed on, and that's my way of just kind of keeping those names on the tips of our tongue so we never forget, and of course my mother, because she was one of my number one influences when it came down to writing. So I wanted to honor my family and leave a legacy, for the Prey family. Yes.
Exactly. I was just thinking that the same thing is that you're definitely leaving a legacy and honoring your family. And I'm sure they're definitely proud and listening as well and realizing that, here it is that your mom, this is what she wanted you to do. And you have honored that too. So that's even much more important. So I just want to ask a couple more questions. Tamara, when you decided to be an author, and I'm sure now that you are and everything's been successful, and I'm sure other people ask you, how did you become an author? What is it you do? So what advice do you give other individuals who come and ask you that question about how to become an author?
Well, I always tell, we have a lot of students who are gifted writers, and they sometimes come to me and, Miss Frazier, how did you get started? Mm-hmm. And I tell them all the time, it started in elementary school. I love to read and I love to write. And it was that, my love for the written and spoken word that kind of translated into me becoming a writer. But I tell them all the time, do your research. Please do your research, because just like other people out there, I learned some things wrong. I learned some things the right way. So I tell them all the time, save yourself some money and some time and some heartache, and make sure you do your research. There is a lot of information out there, and make sure you find someone who does what you want to do well.
Exactly.
And you make that person your ally. Don't. I tell people all the time, don't ask the man who's sitting on the side of the road which direction you should go, and you need to make sure you ask the person who's already walked that path. So align yourself with someone who's already there where you want to go. And I tell people all the time, you can't be afraid, because I was afraid. I was afraid of what people would say about my writing. Maybe they won't like it. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, she's not a real writer. But, you just have to go for it. You cannot let fear stop you from reaching your goals or your dreams. So I tell them all the time, just get out there and do it. And if you fail, so what? You learn something along the way. You pick it back up, and you brush yourself off, and you go forth again. My favorite saying is grow forth. When you're moving forward, you need to be growing as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everything you said is 100% right. And that's the key with being an author, because it's the number one question that I get. And I always ask my authors that, because we all get you kind of give the same answers. And the key is, it's just, you have to do it. You have to learn to just start writing, because you can't be an author without writing something down. But the biggest part that I've learned and found is that when people don't know the process and understand what it means to do, what to do after you write that book, because then it's either going to sit on the shelf because they don't know. And then, like you said, it's either the fear of, well, who's going to read my book? Who's going to care what I have to say? Why am I wasting my time with this? But then here you've already done this. So it's always the after part that really is what people need to learn. And like I said, there's definitely information out there, but there's also, be careful about getting to the right people and making sure that you do understand what it means to be a self-publisher, or, and publishing your own books, or what it means that, hey, do you need to actually get a real publisher, publishing company, or do you want to have somebody what they call hybrid publishing? So there's all these different avenues out there. And when people don't know that, then that's usually when the fear comes in. It's not even so much always about the story and not wanting to tell the story, because there's always going to be somebody who will resonate with that story, but it's truly understanding the process. So, your advice is on point when it comes to just doing it. And like I said, it's not about failure. There's no such thing as failure. It's learning from what you did not accomplish the first time and how you can get back up to make things better, because you do know. So that's the key. That is always the key to everything. And as you were saying earlier, that, here you started with one book, and the next thing you've got this other book, and now you're working on a series. So it just, once it's ingrained, I find it very hard to not want to continue to write, even when I say, oh, I'm not going to do another book.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, absolutely. So, do you have any events, anything coming up, or that you'd like to share with the listeners as well?
I do not have any events coming up. I'm not scheduled for anything. This was the one thing that was on my calendar through the summer, to do the interview with COVID. I had a few book fairs that I was trying to attend, but that that ended with COVID. But what I did in the interim during the pandemic, when I'm at home, I launched my T-shirt line to go with the book.
Oh, okay.
And so I've been busy with that. That's kept me busy. And then also starting on I'm working on a second biography based on a domestic violence story. Mm-hmm. So I'm also doing that. And the T-shirt line is keeping me really busy. Busy.
Well, see, it's not that you're not doing anything. You're absolutely, somebody who said, I'm just not doing anything. You're writing another book. You're doing this, doing that. No big deal, right?
just no events, but I have lots of events at the house.
Obviously. I'm sure you do. But if somebody does want to get a hold of you, Tamara, why don't you tell everybody how they can do that?
Okay. They can get a hold of me through my website, TamaraTheAuthor.com, on Facebook at Tamara the Author, and on Twitter and Instagram at TPF The Right One.
All right. Well, you guys have heard it live. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you, Tamara. And I will say your name properly again. Is Tamara Frazier. And it's funny because when I seen the Pray, I was like, well, I don't know if this is it's something just added in, or if this is the real full name. You don't really know sometimes, but thank you for clarifying that for me. And, you have been a wonderful guest. I appreciate you coming onto the show this evening, spending just a little bit of time with me and sharing your story and talking about your books. And, again, congratulations on what you're doing, and continue to keep up the amazing work and sharing and teaching, and all those other great things. And of course, with all this craziness we got going on in the world, we definitely need things that keep a smile on our face, but also keep us encouraged. So again, thank you for coming on the show with us this evening.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a wonderful time.
Oh, you were quite welcome. And I will hope to talk to you again when you get some of those other books out. I'll have to have you back on the show.
Absolutely. I'll be ready.
All right. Well, you guys again heard it live from Tamara Frazier. She is the author of Your Own Kind of Beautiful. And I appreciate you all listening in to me this evening here on the Author's Corner, which we're here once a month on Friday evenings. If you have not been paying attention to my posting and following me on Facebook and all the other platforms that I have, I wanted to start to tell you all now that the Author's Corner is going, after this year, it is going to collaborate and combine into my other show, Your Resource for Success podcast program, which is also here on iHeartRadio and also on 12 other major audio media platforms. I'm making the change because it's a good change. It's a better change for all of my authors. So the show itself, the other show constantly talks with authors, everybody who's in business, women and men, as well as I have music artists. So we're expanding the show to give a better, broader platform for everybody. So I just want you all to keep in mind that basically the Author's Corner itself will always have its own staple, but it will now be collaborated with the Women's Small Business Initiative, which is Your Resource for Sex podcast show. So I've only got a few more months left by doing the show by itself. So I'm just leaving you all heads up. So as you are continuing to follow and to learn more, you can currently actually go on to the Women's Small Business Initiative, and guess what you're going to find? You will see the author, all the information about all the different shows, where you can find it, everything about me as an author, how all this has come to play with the collaboration. So right now, the two websites are definitely running simultaneously, but they will eventually be just the one, because we are now combining it into one. But if you have any interest and you want to be a part of the show and you want to be a guest on my show, all you have to do is send me a short bio, a professional picture, and of course, if you're an author, I'd like to always have a book cover. So you can send that to Kimberly, WSBI@gmail.com. So it's Kimberly, WSBILC@gmail.com. Then you can send me that information. I will try to get you in next year. We're filling up extremely fast, so do not wait till the last minute if you truly want to be a guest on my show. I'm already in the middle of 2021 with the guest list, and it's constantly growing. So I just wanted to share that information with you all tonight. I hope you did enjoy this show. We had some amazing guests on board here. Earlier, we spoke with Miss Tiffany Toombs, and she had an amazing book talking about Stop Being a Selfish Bee. It's the guide of understanding who you are. And I think that it was just an amazing conversation with her talking about living your best life through radical self and the meaning of that. And then, of course, we just finished with the amazing Miss Tamara Frazier with her amazing books. But the one that we were focusing on this evening, of course, is about your own kind of beautiful. So find these books. I'm sure all these books are available on Amazon. But again, if you were listening, you can reach out to either one of these young ladies and they will give you whatever it is that you would like to get a copy of the book. If you were interested in having them as a guest on your show or guest a speaker, please reach out to them, support them. But until next time, you all have a wonderful evening and good night. We'll talk to you soon.
Good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in tonight. We'll be back next month on Friday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with 2 more amazing guests. Follow us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at author Kimberly McLemore. Music by Audionautics.com.